What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're enjoying the week. Really, I hope that whatever you've had going on, I hope it's been fun. I hope it's been interesting, and I hope that this video finds you well. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. If you like what I do, you like hearing me talk about the Dallas Cowboys, this is the place to access that stuff. We're still working on the podcasting. I know I keep saying that. I promise you, whenever we have an update to share, you will get it from me, not only here on the YouTube channel, but all over social media. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa, or on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. If you would like to send me an email, you can do so, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, or you can leave a comment down below, and we will get to those as well. Today, we're here to talk about something that fascinates me greatly. We found out earlier this week that the NFL is going to be releasing its 2024 schedule, and that obviously means the 2024 Dallas Cowboys schedule next Wednesday on May the 15th. You can bet your bottom dollar that I will have a video up for you here on the channel breaking down the schedule, pointing out the advantages, the disadvantages, the national games, everything you need to know basically, so that we can all get to kind of planning things. Obviously, my life revolves around the Dallas Cowboys, and I know that yours does as well. And so the schedule release is an important thing. This isn't like the NBA or NHL or MLB where there are games happening all the time. The NFL is kind of a week-to-week sort of thing. And if you're like me and you like to plan a trip or you like to go with your family or whatever the case may be, it's important to kind of figure out, well, we wanted to go here, but it's going to be in December. It's going to be cold. So maybe we'll pivot. We'll do this. Oh, but that's near so-and-so's birthday or that wedding we have to go to. Really, in a lot of ways, we can finally start planning our fall and winter, the early part of the winter, obviously, once the schedule is released. But I wanted to come in here today and remind you who the Dallas Cowboys are going to be playing in 2024 and explain how that is the case in case you are somehow unaware. Let's go ahead and put my tweet up on the screen for you. Once again, you can follow me on Twitter at RJ Ochoa. I also shared this on Instagram, did a TikTok about this as well. These are the teams the Cowboys are going to be playing in 2024. Now, a lot of people wonder, how this happens or whatever the case may be. For the most part, 15 of the 17 games are effectively known between now and the end of time, presuming the NFL doesn't add an 18th game, although I think we all believe that that day is inevitable. The Cowboys, because that's who we're talking about here, obviously play the division rivals once each at home and on the road. So you see Washington, New York, and Philadelphia there. And then the other home opponents, you see 6 more games. You see the Detroit Lions at home. You see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the New Orleans Saints, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Houston Texans. Okay, so what do those teams have in common? Obviously, you got 2 NFC South teams and 2 AFC North teams, and you got the Lions and the Texans. What is happening here? In case you don't know, we're going to look at the Cowboys once again because that's the team that we care about here. In 2024, the NFC East is scheduled to play the NFC South relative. Every team plays one division within their own conference. So for the Cowboys, an NFC East team, they will play the NFC South. They also play one division from the opposing conference in 2024. That is the AFC North. In terms of which games are home and away, they're the opposite of what they were last time. So if we put this back up on the screen for you here, the last time the Cowboys played the NFC South on rotation, the last time they went through the division as a whole, not the last time they played each of these teams. We'll get to why that can be a different thing in a moment here. The last time that happened was 2022. And when that happened, the Cowboys went, obviously, to 2021. And the last time that happened, the Cowboys went to Tampa Bay. Remember, that was obviously the opening game of that season when the Bucs were defending Super Bowl champions. They went to New Orleans. Remember, that was the night that Mike McCarthy had to miss. He was on the COVID list. The last time the Cowboys, and therefore the NFC East, played the AFC North was the year before in 2020. Because when you're playing one conference or one division within your own conference, it's one every 3 years because you are one of the divisions. Whereas obviously the divisions from the opposing conference are once every 4 years because you are not in that conference. So the last time the Cowboys played the AFC North was in 2020, the actual initial COVID season. If you recall, they visited the Baltimore Ravens and they visited the Cincinnati Bengals. That Baltimore game was the night that the Cowboys were supposed to take on Dez Bryant. He was ruled out right before the game. obviously on the COVID list himself. I believe that game took place on a Wednesday after some rescheduling. So that was a unique experience to say the least for the Cowboys. They've only beaten the Ravens one time in franchise history. That was actually back in 2016, the last time they hosted the Baltimore Ravens, which they will do obviously this coming fall. The Cowboys in 2020 traveled to take on the Cincinnati Bengals. They won that game behind the quarterback play of Andy Dalton, who was facing Cincinnati for the first time since moving on from them. It obviously happened after that. He played them as a member of the Chicago Bears, but he beat them as a member of the Dallas Cowboys. So where do those other two games come from? I want to just tie up the loose ends here. The away teams that we're looking at here, you got your divisional opponents, obviously, and like the fact that the Cowboys are going to be hosting the Bucs and Saints, they'll be traveling to take on Atlanta and Carolina. In 2021, Dallas hosted those teams. So again, it just kind of flip and flops. Remember the Atlanta game was the monkey butt game that Mike McCarthy had after the Cowboys got destroyed by the Broncos. They came out and blasted the Falcons. This was, not the Dan Quinn watermelon kick game. That was in 2020. This was just when they completely and totally destroyed the Falcons. And the Panthers in 2021, Dallas beat. That was in the early parts of Trayvon Diggs' interception streak when Sam Darnold was playing for them, and everybody thought the Panthers might be something interesting. So yeah, obviously the Cowboys will travel to Cleveland and to Pittsburgh in 2024. In 2020, they hosted those teams. Remember, they almost beat the undefeated Steelers in 2020 with Garrett Gilbert at quarterback, and they lost. They got destroyed by the Browns. Odell Beckham Jr. had a big day, obviously, that day in 2020. The last time that Dallas went to Cleveland and went to Pittsburgh, each time was very unique and interesting. It was all part of that 2016 season, as mentioned. When the Cowboys went to Cleveland, they just beat the tar out of the Browns, and then on the plane ride home did the mannequin challenge. If you remember that, it was that was a big thing at that time. And finally, obviously, the last time the Cowboys went to Pittsburgh was the amazing Zeke Elliott walk-off. So in some respects, I should say, it is appropriate that Zeke will be on the team when the Cowboys travel to Pittsburgh in 2024. Okay, so what about the other three games here? Because we've talked about, obviously, the rotational games, et cetera, but I see three more games, RJ, that you haven't discussed. That's the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, and the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, let's talk about the Lions and the Niners for a second. Let's put the Texans to the side, the way that the state of Texas does when it comes to professional football teams. I kid. I really am a fan of the Texans. I think what they're doing is awesome. But anyway, so we know that the Cowboys are in the NFC East, right? Okay, that's done. We know that in 2024, the NFC East is scheduled to play the NFC South. And so this is going to happen for the Eagles, the Commanders, the Giants as well. Who they host and visit will be a little bit different based on their history with, the rotation or whatnot. But we know the NFC East and NFC South are playing each other. Great. What about the NFC North and the NFC West? Well, the Dallas Cowboys won the NFC East last year. So they will play the teams who finished in the same place as them in those divisions. They're not playing, obviously, the same place finishers from the NFC South specifically. They obviously are still going to play the Buccaneers because they're playing the NFC South as a whole. But as we put this back on the screen for you here, the Detroit Lions won the NFC North the same way the Cowboys won the NFC East, and the San Francisco 49ers won the NFC West the same way the Dallas Cowboys won the NFC East. So those are the two teams who the Cowboys will play from those divisions. If we look at the Eagles as just an example, they finished in second place in the NFC East this past season. So instead of hosting the Lions, they will host the Green Bay Packers, and that game's obviously happening in week 1 of the season in Brazil. So not actually a host game, but it is a home game for Philadelphia, and they will travel not to face the San Francisco 49ers, but the Los Angeles Rams. So each team faces their same place finisher from the other two divisions within their conference. I know this can get very confusing. What about the Texans game, though, RJ? Well, finally, the NFL in 2021 instituted a 17th regular season game. I talked about a little while ago how they are speculated to be adding an 18th game at some point, I would imagine sooner rather than later. Hopefully not, but we'll see. Either way, when they did, we all thought, of different ways the NFL could have gone about this, but what they decided was a similar thing to what we just discussed. Every year, each division plays one division from the opposing conference and plays the same place finisher. In 2024, the Cowboys, as members of the NFC East, will play the same place finisher from the AFC South. So the Cowboys won the NFC East and the Texans won the AFC South. Now, you might be wondering, why is this game at AT&T Stadium? Why isn't it at NRG Stadium in Houston? Well, the NFC and AFC flip and flop. the NFC gets that extra home game in even years for now until there is an 18th game potentially in the regular season, whereas the AFC teams get the home game, the extra home game in odd numbered years. So they had it last year. That's why the Cowboys had 9 road games last year, and they'll have 9 home games this year, which matters if you're a season ticket holder, obviously, because you're going to have to pay for that. But the Cowboys, again, as winners of it, the NFC East will play the Texans, who won the AFC South. Similarly, if we follow this line of logic, the Eagles finish in second place, the Jaguars finish in second place, the Giants and the Colts, the Commanders and the Titans. So that's what, when people talk about first place schedule, last place schedule, when people throw out terms like that, it really only affects 3 games. So it is a significant thing, but it isn't this end all be all sort of thing the way a lot of people make it out to be when they discuss this topic. But to put this back up on your screen, we know who the Cowboys will be playing in 2024. We know where these games will be happening, at home and away. We do not know the sequence, obviously, in which they will happen. We do not know which games will be nationally televised. I would assume there will be one Cowboys-Eagles game on Sunday Night Football. We're obviously hoping for no cold weather in the latter part of the season. And if you look at it, the coldest weather climates the Cowboys will visit are obviously their own division rivals. But, Carolina can get kind of chilly, certainly Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Thankfully, Atlanta is a domed building, so we want that game to be in December, preferably, so Dallas doesn't have to deal with those elements. But you look at it, their home schedule, there are a lot of playoff teams there. You got the Philadelphia Eagles, the Detroit Lions, the Buccaneers, obviously, the Ravens, and the Texans. 5 home playoff games. 5 games against teams who were in the playoffs, I should say, last year. 6 if you kind of count the Bengals, even though they weren't a playoff team, but they were obviously very, very, very good. Versus on the road, you've got the Eagles, obviously, you've got the Niners, you've got the Browns, and hey, it's a much easier slate on the road this year for the Cowboys, but we'll see how that ultimately kind of shakes itself out. We'll see what the schedule ultimately shakes out to look like. I'm excited. My personal opinion, because I've been to some of these places, I've been to Pittsburgh. I was at that 2016 game. I've been to Atlanta. I haven't been to any division rivalries. I've been to Cleveland, not for a Cowboys game, but I've been to that building. It's fantastic. I would recommend any of those venues. I've been to AT&T Stadium a billion times. If you're looking for a road trip, and you really don't care, you're already kind of starting to want to plan, you can certainly hit me up and ask me any kind of question. But I cannot recommend Pittsburgh enough. That was just one of the best trips I've ever been on. I absolutely loved it. 2 classic Tiffany brand franchises going at each other in an amazing sports town. The game in 2016, 8 years ago, was in mid-November. It was about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, so the weather wasn't quite super cold, but it was just, chilly enough to really kind of get the vibe of football season. And so it was one of the better trips that my dad and I have gone on together. I've told the story many times. Our seats happened to be next to the late, great Franco Harris, and it was just such a treat to get to sit next to him. That was the peak of the Dak Romo discussion, who should start. And so talking about that with Franco Harris, of all people, was just an incredibly surreal sort of thing. But if you're going to make a trip, I hope you enjoy it, whoever you're going to go with. I hope it's a wonderful time, and I hope that you have yourself a wonderful day. If you haven't yet, please consider once again subscribing here to the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel, the most subscribed to team-specific YouTube channel across all of the SB Nation universe. That's right, we are number 1, numero uno. My name is RJ Ochoa. If you would like, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa, or on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. For now, I'm going to bid you adieu and hope you have a wonderful day, and tell you that I can't wait to see you over the weekend when you'll get our next video here on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. See you next time.